Hi, everyone. So I'm recording this, our live trees workshop, and this will go up onto YouTube. So anyone who wants to rewatch it, or you can share it. The Eat, Paint, Live workshops are free. You know, they're a tip situation. If you enjoy it, you can feel free to tip your host, and that's me. But they are free. So we make these videos, or I make these videos available on YouTube. And they're in an open channel. So if you have a friend who you think might be curious, you can send them the link. No problem. And they can watch it too. And then anyone who misses today can watch it, which is pretty cool. So I want to say thank you for joining me. I know we've had a hiatus from doing our Eat, Paint, Live workshops. And that's just because Charlie was so busy with this book. Anyone who is on Charlie's Instagram or on his mailing list, you get to see a preview of the book. It came out yesterday. And they are available for pre-order. And this is my former partner in Eat, Paint, Live, Charles Leon. Some of you guys know him quite well. I know some of you don't know him, but he is an excellent artist, and he's just done a book with Kew Gardens. And it's actually not about the foliage at Kew Gardens, it's about the buildings, because no one's ever done a book about that before. So they commissioned him to do it. But of course, there's a lot of trees in there that are both, you know, the backgrounds and the supporting players to these beautiful buildings and structures. So yeah, you might want to check it out either on Insta or his website. It's pretty beautiful. It's like 100 pages of beautiful drawings. And he does add watercolor to quite a few of them. So anyway, enough about Charlie. Welcome to Eat, Paint, Live. We do these live monthly workshops. We had a bit of a break, but we're back now. And I'll be hosting most of them. And so I do want to hear from you either throughout this or afterwards, what else you guys want to draw? What would you like to cover in these monthly workshops? So feel free to suggest. I have ideas, but I want to know what you guys want. So yeah, just let me know in the chat or whenever. And this is an interactive workshop, so feel free to jump in. If there's a lot of you at once, I might just ask, raise your virtual hand. Okay. So what are we going to do today? We're going to talk about trees. We're going to, you know, not scientifically or anything like that, but how to observe them, what to look for, and what to think about when drawing them. And then we're going to draw some. So that's what we're going to do today. And what will you need? Paper and a pencil or a pen if you want to sketch along. If you want to sketch in watercolor, you're welcome to do that. My method when I'm drawing trees, not when I'm painting them or putting them into a landscape, is I do sketch first. I go pencil, sometimes I add ink, not something you guys really see from me that often, but I actually do it quite a bit. And you'll see it in some of the slides I have to share. And some of you guys might be surprised. It's funny on Instagram, whenever I post something with ink, my followers go crazy. They're like, I never knew that you put ink in things. I'm like, I do. I just don't necessarily always share that. And it's not what I teach in class. But I've been thinking about doing a lesson on that too. Anyway, and then at the end, I'll add watercolor or marker or whatever it is else that I'm working with. Sometimes I work in oils. I'll show you one of those today. Cool. So any questions before we get started? All right. You guys ready to draw with me today? Oh, yes. Linda, did you have a question?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, cool.
I just noticed your cat walking across the...
Oh, yeah. He's doing much better today, everybody. Oh, he is on kitty Prozac. So, yeah. All right. I think I can start from here. Let's see if this works. Okay. Everyone see this? I should always ask the opposite. Is there anyone who can't? Okay. All right. So today I'm going to talk about drawing different kinds of trees. And for me, drawing just about anything always starts with observation, because I don't draw a lot from my imagination. I really don't. So for me, it's important to observe, and then I sketch, and then I refine. And that is just the simplest way to describe my approach. And so that's how I'll sort of be talking about it today. We'll do deep dives on different elements of the trees and different kinds of trees and things like that. So can you guys see the whole screen on this? You see the little group over there?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's our group in Ojai. This is Camp Comfort in Ojai, which had gorgeous trees and not much views. So this wasn't about the views in Ojai. This day was all about the trees. So I chose this as the head picture, first picture. Okay, so let's talk about the different things we'll be looking at today. We're going to look at the different elements of a tree, the things that I observe and think about when I'm drawing trees. And we're also going to cover 3 common or basic types of trees. And then we'll build a tree. We'll build a tree from the roots up. And then we'll also be talking throughout and a little bit at the end as to what role the tree or trees play in your pictures. Okay, I might say drawing, I might say painting. I teach watercolor a lot, so I might say painting. But in this case, it's we're talking about whether you're sketching in pencil, marker, watercolor, whatever you're sketching in, charcoal, pastel, it's all relevant. We're not going to really go into too much watercolor technique. But if you have questions about the techniques in the pictures, then just ask. And I want to say welcome to those of you guys who just joined. Hi, Shirley. Hi, Hillary.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Sorry for the delay.
That's okay. Welcome. People can jump in and out. That's fine. And I am recording. So anything you missed, you can go watch once it's up on YouTube. And then anything that anytime you want to share, or if you want to just review it, you're welcome to. So we were just starting off about what we're going to cover. And we're just going to talk a little bit about trees, and we're going to sketch today. So if you want to sketch, just have some sketching materials, whatever is your favorite. Hi, Ginny. Nice to see you. Okay, so what are the different elements of trees in general? Okay, now there are a lot of weird trees out there, but most trees have the same elements, the same basic forms in their structure. So when I'm thinking about sketching a tree, when I begin to sketch a tree, first of all, I think about the form, which is the overall shape of the tree, the shape of the trunk, the shape of the overall silhouette, and the canopy, which is refers to numerous trees. Like in a forest is let's call it the silhouette of the tree line. But I call canopy also the crown of the tree, which is just the top. Right? What does it look like shape-wise? So if you look at like a linear drawing, can you guys see me move my arrow? Or maybe I'll annotate. I'm never sure if you guys can see. So when I talk about form, I'm talking about what does it look like? It looks like this. And then I also think about the proportion. So how much of the tree is trunk compared to how much of it is crown or canopy? Okay, makes sense? Can you guys see the blue annotation?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
And you know, measuring is important. Yeah, because I can make it red, I think, if it helps. Let me see if oh, you guys can see it, right? Okay, I changed it to red anyway. I think about proportion too. So you guys can use either your thumb holding it up when you're drawing, or you can literally measure or grid something out. But when I look at this, I see there's 1, and then I see 1, 2, 3.5, maybe in this particular, because the whole trunk isn't showing. And then you can do the same thing horizontally. Proportion can be very important in identifying like a tree species. So if it's important to you, you like that particular shape, or you want to demonstrate that species, then make sure you do take note of the proportion. That's the first thing I think about, because I think in shapes. So I think about what is the shape of this tree and overall, and I don't get too deep into the details. Then the first thing after that I look at is I look at the trunks. So the trunk is where it starts. Quite often you can't see the roots underground, above ground. But I think about the trunk next, and I usually draw the trunk after I've drawn this basic canopy shape or crown shape. And then the branches are extension of the trunk or trunks. Some trees have multiple stocky kind of trunks. So then I think about the branches next. And I do think about the main branches and then the smaller ones, and even smaller, right? They're kind of like capillaries. And then I think about the leaves. And then I consider the extras, I'll call it, like fruit, flowers, pine cones, nuts, those kind of extra things. So I don't get too deep into the weeds. These are the different elements that I look at. Although sometimes you know, maybe it's like a pine cone or something like that. That's super interesting. So I might do a little study of that first. But when I'm thinking about sketching a tree or trees, I usually think about it in this order. Does anybody do it differently? Okay.
Yeah, no, no rhyme or reason at all. I never think about it or plan it like that.
Okay, cool. So you just start at whatever is like either a midpoint or a focal point. You just kind of just go, right?
Yeah, and then it doesn't fit on the page, so I'm gonna have to start planning.
Yeah, that is the issue. Oh, sorry, that's the issue that I have as well, is that often when I don't plan, I run off the page. Sometimes it's cool to run off the page on purpose, but not always cool to run off the page when you don't, when you want to have the complete picture in there, or when there's something that's important, like the focal point, and you don't find room for that on the page, especially when you're sketching plein air, because we just don't have time to do it all over again, you know? So a little bit of planning goes a long way. Okay, beginners definitely welcome here. I'm looking at the chat. So let me get rid of that. My annotate button doesn't want me to keep going. Okay. So here's that picture with color. Color is usually the last thing that I had. And I just wanted to show you this because what you can see, and most of the artwork in this is mine. I'll point out when it isn't. What you can see is that I didn't bother to erase the pencil that I drew to get the overall shape and canopy. You can see like little pencil lines throughout, I think. And that's just because I knew I was going over it and I was going for like a loose feel to it. So it was a sketch, you know. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about form. The most important thing to know is to get rid of the way that we learned to draw trees as children. They are not lollipops on sticks. They're three-dimensional items, right? Three-dimensional things. So thinking about trees into 3D and how to transfer a three-dimensional thing to two dimensions, a flat piece of paper, is critical in doing a realistic looking tree. So again, you want to think about seeing shape in the canopy or crown of the tree. Individual tree is a crown, the group of trees would be a canopy. And if you are a shapes person like me, you can use shapes as well as lines. So you can use shapes, for example, in this top sketch here, you can see where I just used a shape to draw the canopy of all of these trees, and then even the canopy here of these shrubs. And then just a few lines to sort of note how there are overlapping trunks and things like that, one in front of the other, but I didn't draw separate trees. I just drew a shape using a contour line. And the three-dimensionality will come in for me a little bit later, but some of the shading helps me a bit. So you can use shapes to help with your compositions, especially when the trees are in the background and when you have multiple trees and they're all the same values, you just connect them, right? Just one big background shape. That's going to be a very different method when the tree is actually your subject. So when the tree is your main subject, then you can use shapes, but you'll use them in a different way because we're going to be looking for shapes that help us really to define not just the silhouette of the tree, but the overall form of the tree in 3 dimensions. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So this is Charlie's sketch, not mine. And you could see how he has used these different like clumps of the leaves to create their different shapes. I think his trunk is a little two-dimensional, but I'm guessing this is a really fast sketch. And then there's a lot of the shading helps. A lot of shading helps here. And then in the background, you have a little bit more of just contouring going on with a bit of shapes because there probably were a lot of trees and clouds in that background. Okay. So when you guys look at this, do you see shapes in the tree photo to the left? Not the drawing, but the photo. Can you start to discern sort of shapes, both positive and negative?
Yeah.
Good. So don't get lost in the leaves. Like if you squint, really, really squint, you can't really even see a lot of leaves. You might see some of the brightest ones, but you can sure see a shape in there. You should be able to. So squinting is a good tool to blur out the details and start with the bigger picture. Okay, so questions about that? I think my annotation lines are still there. I'm gonna get rid of them. Didn't know they went from slide to slide, but I guess they're part of Zoom, not part of my PowerPoint. Okay, so I start with the trunk. I start thinking about the trunk because the trunk is the body of the tree, right? That's what everything else branches off. So everything else other than the trunk is legs and arms and hair and fingers and all of that. The trunk is the body. So something important to remember, trunks are cylinders, okay? When you are drawing a trunk, don't just draw two straight lines next to each other, okay? Also, most trunks taper. They taper as they go from the bottom to the top. Not all taper the same, not the same thickness and not all the same length and stuff like that, but most trees are larger at the bottom and they taper towards the top. You guys can probably, if you know more about trees than I do, you'll know a few that don't. So there are some like palm trees that don't, for example. So trunks are tubes. When you're thinking about 3 dimensions, think about drawing a cylinder like a paper towel roll, for example, or dowels. If you can think about them that way. The same goes for branches. They're not just lines coming off of the tree. They're 3 dimensions. So think about them as just smaller cylinders. And then what I do is I build the trunk and then I build the branches coming off at natural angles. What that means is, and I know this picture wasn't the best one, but the branches of most trees, they fan out in 360 degrees. So branches come from all directions of the tree, right? Not just the sides coming out like this. They're coming out from all over, from behind, from in front, which then have to be foreshortened, and from not all just from the sides, whether it's up or down or anything, but they're not coming out like this. They're coming out like everywhere, right? Not all trees, but most trees. So the way to do that is you have to think about how to layer your branches so that they are radiating out at natural angles. Okay, so you can kind of see here how this branch is more in front, and then this branch and this branch are layered behind it. Same with here. I'm gonna annotate it. This branch is behind this branch, right? Just like this one is behind. And if I had done a more thorough drawing, there would have been one really coming from, really it would be starting at this point back here in the back. There were, oddly enough, were no branches that were coming towards me, but if there were, I would have to draw them in a foreshortened way, which we don't have tons of time to go into today, but Google foreshortening if you don't know a lot about it. But I'll give you a little trick in a little bit for how to do that. Okay. So then once I've got like a skeleton of a tree, then I can add shadow. We'll talk a little bit more about shadow. And then if you're looking to observe trees, it is easier to do them when the leaves aren't as thick. So in the winter time is a much better time to try to observe your trees. And then another thing to remember is to just, I say, describe the bark texture. So just like you don't need to draw every leaf or branch, you don't need to draw every bit of bark, but it's a good idea to describe in some areas, so include some detail, and then you've just sort of suggested it. So I've got some on the trunk here, but as I go further up the trunk, I don't have all of the bark. But I can't see it because I'm not Superman, so I can only see what's closer to me. So then also on this branch and this branch, I describe the bark a little bit less here, and then not at all as I go higher. So it's just like when you draw a person or a pet, you can't draw every hair, so you don't try. You just draw the shape and the breaks, and then you sort of suggest a little bit. And our brains fill in the rest because we're smart. Humans are smart, and brains want to complete things. So do you guys know what kind of tree this is? Anyone? This is a chestnut tree. These little droppies here, and the bark. And there were also a lot of woodpeckers in this area, so I drew the little woodpecker holes. If you guys can see those. The shapes, I just drew a few of those leaves. But check out how I've drawn the branches, and notice also the direction that they're going in. We'll talk about branches next. Okay, so here's your cylinders. If you think in 3 dimensions, it will help you. I've drawn some of them in the blue for the larger ones, and then I've just drawn a bit of the, I guess, contour to kind of showcase how you can sort of think about the bends and kind of try to keep the dimensionality of the branches as they thicken, as they narrow, as they turn and bend. Is it helpful for you guys to think about it in that way?
Yes.
Cool. Oh, Shirley says, love it. Thank you, Shirley.
Mhm.
Okay. So if you need help, it's like having the little figurine of the man. You know, you can have different size rolls and dowels. It would be kind of cool if somebody had a bendable tree shape that you could put into all different positions. Then you could draw imaginary trees pretty easily. But I just try to remember like my circles and my ellipses. And that helps me. And when you start to texturize the branches and trunk, and when you texturize and put shadow on, you can create the form of the tree by remembering that it is 3-dimensional. And I'm going to show you a picture of that. Okay, so here's some trunks that are here's this one's the main subject, and the actual whole tree is the supporting players. But I've described the shape of the trunk, some of the texture of it. And in this one here, and this is a redwood. The one on the right is just the base of a palm tree. It's actually, I was playing with the composition of this picture, and I did one in a vertical format, and then I decided to do a horizontal one because for me, it was about the aloes, but I wanted to capture some of that, I thought, interesting palm tree trunk texture in the background. Might not immediately jump out to everybody as a palm tree background, but I was okay with that. I just really liked that mental image and I wanted to capture it. Okay, so we're not going to draw a tree trunk. We'll do that when we draw a whole tree. Okay, let's talk about the next element, and that's branches. So branches are also 3-dimensional and they have different shapes and sizes. So trees, generally, their branches will follow like one sort of shape, I guess. You can have branches that are sharp and angular. You can have branches that are more smooth and flowing, like think of a weeping willow. This tree is sort of in between that, isn't it? And you can have branches that are short or are very long. And so it's important to observe the length and the angles, how they split off from each other. Do the branches point upwards? Do they point downwards? Or do they kind of point outward and downwards, or outward and upwards? All branches are different. And also, how do they split off each other, and where? So where do the branches start? Do they start sort of low down on the trunk or higher up on the trunk? Okay. And then of course you can add shadow and texture. So in this picture, you can clearly, I think, see where the shadows are. They're almost always going to be on the bottoms of your branches, because generally the light source is above the tree, right? It's the sun. So you're not going to have shadows on the top, but you may have, if it's high noon, all the shadows will be on the bottom. You can really tell when it's noon because there will not be much of a shadow underneath the tree. If it has a very large canopy, it'll be like very evenly all around the tree, like a placemat. But then if you look for where the sun would be, for example, in this picture, it's going to be in the upper right, because you can see where the lightest lights are, and they're here. Some are hitting in here, which means there's not a lot of leaves, but also on the whole, this side of the trunk is lighter and this side is darker. And so this means the light source is coming through like this. You have this one, which is interesting because it's kind of turned up. This branch, it's kind of twisted upwards. So pay attention to that and it'll be easy to add shadow, and the shadow helps create the form because the shadow follows the form of the shape that you've created, that two-dimensional shape. And that's what makes it looks three-dimensional, right? Does that make sense, everyone?
Mhm.
Okay, so in this picture is a question for the group. What do you guys think? Raise your hand if you think the tree is the main subject.
Hmm.
No, okay. What's the main subject, do you think here?
Cactus.
Photographer, right? Those barrel cactuses, right? Not only are they foreground, but they're also lighter and brighter. And they're more in focus. So the tree in this picture is a supporting character, isn't it? I wouldn't call it background. I think all this other stuff is background, but it's definitely a supporting character. It's also a frame. So you can use trees to frame your landscapes or your botanical images or anything. And trees work as really good frames. So I'll show you some more examples of that. So thinking about your, when you want to put a tree or you want to draw a tree, if you left these cacti out or minimize them somehow, then this tree could be your main star if you were drawing this out in nature or even in the studio. But the way it is, it's just a supporting player. If I were going to title this, I would call it like cacti under a tree, or I might just call it barrel cacti. You know, I wouldn't call it tree with some cacti. Does that make sense? So I know some of you guys are taking my class, and so we're thinking and talking a lot about how to make what you want to make the focus of the painting stand out and be more clear. Oh, okay, we're talking about form and shadow. This is over at the Colorado Lagoon, on the far side of the lagoon. And this is a really great curving tree. And you can see how the trunk and the branches have not only a lot of shadow to them, but also how the texture of the bark helps to create the form. So just like in that other picture, like when you create the texture here on the bark, you're going to curve it along with the tubes or cylinders that you've just drawn. And that's really going to help you. Oops, I can't, sorry, messed that up. I need like a stylus, I think. But you can really see how it's the shadow, like you see the shadow all down this side and then it stops, for example, in here. And that is helpful, but I think more importantly, the texture is very helpful in creating these foreshortened shapes and also creating the curves. Interesting, isn't it? What else do you guys notice about this picture? Anyone? Do you guys notice the sky holes are very prominent here?
Yes. They're pretty.
Yeah, they're really nice. So when you're drawing branches, it's important also to think about negative space. I'm trying to get rid of those last annotations and it won't. So I think I have to stop it and then start it again. Okay, so would you guys like to take a stab at drawing this, or do you think this is too challenging?
I would like to.
That tree you just showed,
Yeah,
that's a bit of a challenge for my skills. Yeah.
quite a challenge. Okay, let's pick another one then. Okay. Well, you guys
Somebody
who
else,
are,
I mean, everybody,
sorry, go ahead. Is there anyone who really, really wants to draw this one? It's really hard. Okay, I see everybody laughing at me. Okay, well, if you feel like you work yourselves up to it, then it'll be on the recording, right? Okay, so here again are the branches. We might not have focused on them before, but how long and thin and lean they are. And then I also wanted to capture the color because for me, it's so interesting that eucalyptus branches are red sometimes. I did some of them in the drawing and then I added some of them just in watercolor here, by the way. Okay, this is right outside my window. We've got a chestnut tree and then we have, I think that this is an alder, I think is what this is. Could be wrong, but I didn't try to capture everything. I was just trying to captured this one big branch that was by my window, and then some of the crowdedness, like the mayhem that was going on with these very angular branches coming off in all directions, which I just found so interesting. And then the leaves and the chestnuts themselves. And I did this in my TWSBI pen. I ended up coloring it in with paint later. All right. So let's talk about the fun part. Leaves can often be the hardest part of the tree to draw. But once you get a grip on it, I think it's the most fun part. So anyone have challenges drawing the leaves? How to get the shape right? How many of them, like where to start, where to stop?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the hardest thing. Okay, so the important thing again is to remember the size and shape of the crown or the canopy if you're doing multiple trees. And for me, it's like, just think in a big shape, but then you can describe that big shape with a pencil, but then think in clumps. So you can't possibly draw every leaf, but a lot of the leaves on the trees, they come in a lot of trees, they come in clumps. So you'll have a branch and then branches branching off of it. And then those leaves that are attached to those branches will form clumps. Not every tree is like that, right? But a lot of, especially broadleaf trees will be like that. So if you think in clumps, then you can see here, you've got shape, you've got clump, and these clumps were drawn and then detailed. Okay, and then once you've got some of those main clumps in, you see these pencil lines, right? Once you've got some of those main clumps in, then you probably feel confident enough to just give it a go. Okay, so once you describe the clump, whether it's in ink or pencil, then you observe the individual leaf, okay? So look at one leaf. Think about the size and shape. How does it attach to the branch? Okay, so does it attach, like, I'll show you an image where you can see, is one leaf or is it like multiple leaves that fan out, for example? And then do they alternate or do they come off together? Well, in this picture, it's not so, it's very sketchy, right? It's very like impressionistic. So it doesn't matter so much, but the size and the shape, it still informs what you see when you look at it. So even though it's not meticulously drawn, it's still there. You still have like a size and a shape and a directionality and this sense of density as well. And I think all those things are important. So whether the tree is the star and it's very meticulously drawn, or whether you're drawing it in a sketchy sense, or whether it is background, all of those things are going to be informed by your observation and your like thinking and looking about it. How you then decide to paint it or draw it is up to you, right? You can go really detailed and photorealistic and then all the way across the spectrum. So, but it's the same considerations. It's just how you then interpret it that differs. I hope that makes sense. So all those things are things I think about. I also think about the negative space. The negative space is important, like, because it creates a mood in the painting when you have a very full sort of heavy tree with no light coming through versus when you've got a lot of skylight coming through. So not only does it help define that type of tree if you want to, it also helps define a mood. And then think about if the leaves are dense or if they're sparse. You know, if it's autumn, they're usually going to be a lot sparser. Or winter, but also different trees are just different. And then also with the negative space, what shapes are they? So those are kind of the things that I think about. It's a lot, right, to think about with trees. Quite a bit. So there's a lot to leaves too, but all you have to do is observe. You don't need to know all the names, but you can think about, you know, is it a broadleaf? Does it have lobes on it like an oak tree? We all have seen these before. You know, is it more like a maple leaf? Are there a lot of leaves that come out all at once? These can be harder to draw. And then what do the veins look like? You know, there's so many different things. So here's a good one for us to maybe draw. What do you guys think? This is in Chiswick in England in a park. I do not know what kind of trees these are. Does anybody know? Might be a larch here because they're really big. There's a lot of larches in England. Very, very different trees, right? From the size of the tree, from the shape of the trunk, the length of the trunk. Look how sparse this one is. Look how dense and clumpy this one is. But these branches are super long, but I get the sense that on the larch to the right, the branches, they're not that long. They're shorter branches, but with a lot more clumps to them.
Mhm.
Okay, plus the proportion is so different. So do you guys want to take about 10 minutes and draw one of these?
Yep.
Okay, you choose. We don't have to all draw the same one. So I'm just looking at my clock. We'll take about 5 to 10 minutes actually. So I'm going to draw at the same time as you guys, but I won't show you what I'm drawing. You guys get enough of that on Fridays. So remember just to think about the size and proportion first. And you can squint a little bit.
Which one are we supposed to draw? The one on the right or the left?
Whichever one you think is easier. Now, the one on the left is not cut off. So you don't have to use your deduction skills at all. It's all right there in front of you. The one on the right is cut off at the top. And that happens, the reason why I use this anyway is because that happens all the time. Like this is an actual photo I took. Now in real life, I did not, it was 103 degrees in England on this day. I couldn't sit and draw this. I actually drew something else when I found some shade, but I couldn't draw this. But I really liked it. So I took the picture, but I couldn't get all the trees. It's so tall. So this happens all the time, and that you might need to Google or just imagine based on the information that you have at hand, what does the rest of that tree look like? So remember, if you are comfortable with it, start with branch, a trunk, and then branch after you've got that shape down a little. And I'm drawing with a pencil, and don't worry about, just draw over the lines. If you draw a line that's wrong, don't erase. We don't have time to erase today. It's definitely high noon. Also, by the way, in this picture, you can tell, or almost high noon. I think it was like 12:30, but you could tell by the way the shadow is. And there are very few shadows in the body that form the form of the trunk on either tree, because the sun is directly overhead. But you do have a lot of texture in the trees to help you. If anyone gets stuck, just shout. So the other thing to remember when you're drawing a tree is, even if your tree is the main subject of your picture, it doesn't have to be a portrait of a tree. So you're drawing a tree, your interpretation of it. You're not drawing Mr. Tree, Mr. Trizic tree. The tree is not going to get mad at you if you put a leaf in the wrong place, right? You're just trying to get a general sense of it. Now, whatever is important to you, whether it's the color or the shape, or maybe there's one like super interesting branch that you like, that might be really important to you to get right. And the rest of it can just be your interpretation of it. So don't worry about trying to achieve like perfection with the tree. It's pretty much, like I said, almost impossible to draw every leaf. So don't even try.
That just took the stress level down for me a lot. It's like,
Oh, good.
this tree.
The tree is not going to get mad at you if you have a leaf out of place. The tree is never going to say to you, that doesn't look like me. Your inner critic might say it, but that tree doesn't. And a lot of the time when I'm going out to draw outside, or even if I'm drawing trees inside, which I used to do like all the time when I was a teenager, I'm doing it for fun. I'm not doing it to prove to myself that I can get a likeness of this tree. I mean, yeah, most of the time, it's not important. So yeah, you want to capture what you want to capture, but take the pressure down. And all trees are different, right? So even within the larch family, for example, some trees are going to be weathered and old and maybe be really shaped by the weather. Other trees are going to be younger and maybe they have more room to grow. They won't be shaped so much. So every tree is going to be different. Every tree. Three more minutes. Did that just put the pressure back on again? Also, it's up to you to change it. So if there's like one weird branch that sort of ruins it for you, you know, you can take it away. You don't have to draw it. So I chose these shapes because they're interesting, but also because there wasn't a lot of shadow to worry about so much. All right, 1 minute. Can you guys hear the cat?
Oh,
Oh, he's so loud right now. I'm glad you can. So what's really interesting about this is that the background is darker on the left, at least. The background is darker than these very light branches. I think that's kind of cool. So if I were really going into it, I might even go. So I'm taking it away now, you guys. If you want to keep drawing it, do a quick screenshot. Okay. So let me see if I could share on. I'll share mine and then we'll all share ours. Let me see if I could share on my visualizer. Ooh, not aligned at all. So now I chose the one on the left. And now is when, if I want to, I can kind of go in and all of the shape that I drew, I can get rid of that. And then you'll see some more of the sparseness. So I just draw over lines to get until I get to the right sort of angle and shape. Sometimes I get overzealous and there's way too many lines. So you can get rid of those. Now, if you have a very dense canopy, you might not need to get rid of any of those at all. Okay, but it does help. Once I've taken them away, you can kind of see how sparse it was. It fixed it a little bit. So you guys want to hold up and share yours and I'll spotlight everybody. If you hold yours up, I'll spotlight you. And then we can all see each other's. And it just takes me a second. Beautiful, Ginny. Wow. I love how sketchy it is. Great. Nice, Bonnie. Comment to everybody. Let's see. Oh, Christine, I can see you've got a lot of shadow in that. Lovely. Did you use a marker on that?
No, I used what do you call the Fude?
Oh, the Fude pen. Nice. Jerry, I can't see yours. Unfortunately, it's kind of a blur. But thank you guys for sharing. Oh, Karen. Sorry, Karen. Here I come. Beautiful, Karen. Nice. And Shirley. So Shirley, you're a beginner. Keep it held up. Oh, wonderful, Shirley. You really got that large, that height and the proportion to it. Nice work. Wow. So how did you guys find that versus maybe some attempts you've had at trees in the past? Just
Good.
a little bit of guidance as to where, sorry, I have to like move all the spotlights around. Yeah, so a little bit of guidance as to where to start. Was it helpful?
Easy.
I
Yes,
think
and I like
it was the
the-
most, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jenny.
No, I never looked at all those different pieces before. I just went for it.
Yeah, exactly. I used to too. Yeah. And then somebody started to say something about the light.
I was gonna say that teaching us how to do the shape, the basic shape of the tree and think in the bunches really has helped me have a little looser hand when it comes to drawing a tree.
Oh, good. Some, I'm glad to hear that. So some artists will draw primarily with line, they see in line. Other ones see color and others see shape or shadow. I see shape, so that's how I start. And some sketch artists, probably not in the field because maybe it's too much, but in the studio, they'll start with a lighter pencil. So they'll start with like an H pencil, a B pencil, excuse me. And what they'll do is they'll go from like the lighter graphite when they're just doing a basic shape, and then they'll choose a softer, darker pencil, excuse me, my brain's not working this morning, a softer, darker pencil to start to refine things, and then move to like the darkest pencil for the later stages to add all the details and such. So you can actually switch pencils and then you don't have to erase anything either. And it's less of a commitment. So just depends on how you want to do it. If you just want to go for it and commit, or you sort of want to start more tentatively and build from there. Everybody did such a good job. Shirley?
Should you use the pencil to do the shading, or should you use the watercolor?
So Shirley, you are a beginner watercolorist, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that is a great question. So when I'm doing sketches, let me see if I can find one. Yeah, here's one. No, that's not it. I got one somewhere in here. If I'm just sketching, I will shade often with the pencil and then go over it with the watercolor. Just for sketches, I'll do that. Like practice sort of stuff, experimental stuff. Same with that eucalyptus that I drew. So I shaded in pencil, then I shaded in ink, and then I also used the colors in the watercolor, different color greens to create lights and darks. When I'm just doing a painting, I don't want a lot of graphite on my watercolor paper. It dirties it up, and I try to go for as little graphite as possible. Once you've laid down the color, it is on watercolor paper, it's hard to erase the pencil away. So, for example, this is my study of a pine cone, and there's a lot of pencil in it. Like you can't see it there, but there you can see it, right? And if I don't want that, and I just want to now create a painting of a pine cone and use my watercolors to make line and shading, then what I'll do is I'll use a piece of tracing paper and I'll just trace this, just the basics, like the most important lines, and then transfer it onto watercolor paper so I have as few graphite lines as possible. I hope that
Thank
helps.
you. That was
You're
very
welcome.
helpful. Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, so let's continue. Do a little more here. I thought there wouldn't be more to trees, but there is. So we've got a couple different kinds of trees with the spotlight on the leaves here. got a Joshua tree. Sometimes leaves point up, like the bristles on the Joshua tree point up. Magnolia leaves point up. It's really helpful to do studies of leaves sometimes too, especially if you're a nature journaler. You know, do the big tree, but then zoom in and do a detail too, or the other way around. This is banana palm. So it's important to also be able to see the leaves in all directions. They don't look the same. So we talked about how they're going 360 around the plant or the tree, but they're not going 360 and looking the same in every direction. Your perspective and the foreshortening will change. So it's helpful to be able to translate that into 2 dimensions. Those are little ginkgos. Wanted to get the color and the texture correct. Okay, so after I do the leaves, then there's all that other stuff. So to think about, which we've talked a little bit about already, but you've got sometimes incredible root systems that come above the earth, like this banyan at the rancho, Los Alamitos. We got the roots, you've got leaves, you might have fruit like on an olive tree or an avocado, you might have nuts or pine cones, or flowers, which are integral in this dogwood. Sometimes they're the prettiest part of the tree. So that's when you can start thinking, I think, about how to add them. And again, studying them, just drawing them when you're outside. Like I didn't try to draw this whole avocado tree. I just wanted the fruit and the leaves. So I just sketched it. Oh, there you can really see all the pencil line. Not terrible because my colors are dark, but if they were lighter, I wouldn't want it all there. Okay. So we'll talk about a few different kinds of trees. So you guys, we have a lot of conifers. Even though we're a desert, we have a lot of palm trees, but we also have a lot of, evergreens here in Long Beach. So forget your Christmas tree icon. It is not how trees really look. Okay, conifers, a couple things to note. You've got a single trunk, vertical, it usually tapers. And the overall shape of a conifer is usually a cone, a conical shape. And the branches point, not like on your Christmas tree flat drawing, the branches point up at the top. They point out as they go towards the middle, and they actually get longer and heavier with, because they're the older branches, so they have more greenery on them and they have more branches shooting off of them. So they become weighed down. So the lower branches point downwards. This is, I was told, the craziest drawing I've ever made in my sketchbook, but I wanted to really show you guys how, because conifers can be really hard to translate, but I wanted to show you how to think about it. And once you've got the shape of the trunk and the shape of those branches in, you can start thinking about the clumps. Quite often, I mean, with conifers, almost always, there's no holes in the tree like there was in that chestnut tree where there was no branch coming forward. So you've got to get the shape of that one clump that's coming towards you. There's multiples of them, right? All coming towards you, because especially in a dense conifer. I think of it as a claw. It's a claw shape. So whether the claw is facing up or it's facing down, they're not a bunch of needles. The whole clump of needles forms like a claw shape. Okay? If you can get that shape of that claw, I learned that from John Muir Laws from his nature journaling guide. If you can get that right, it really helps. Okay, so here's my little claws that you see on here in green. Oh, if you like me, you could tip me. Thank you. If you're enjoying this, feel free. You don't have to. It's up to you. I'll send out my Venmo link in the with the link to the YouTube video later today. Okay, so here's some evergreens. They're snow laden, so I've drawn them with snow on them. This was from last year. We did these around Christmas time and they were super fun. These were done using a negative painting technique where we paint the background first. But in any case, I think you guys can really see the claws here. So you can see how here the greenery points upwards along with the branches. They're sort of pointing up and then they start pointing out. And then as things get laden, and these are laden even with snow, then they start pointing much more downwards, okay? You can also see the claws in here. And so I'm thinking in clumps, and the claws that are coming towards you, I think here's a good one. You can kind of see those. Okay. And again, there's different types of evergreens. Some are going to be more dense than others, but in general, you've got like spokes radiating around a wheel. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Some of you guys have done these with me before, so we've drawn them and then painted them. I don't think we've really talked too much about drawing them. Okay, so here's where I wanted to show you these trees. This is your main subject, right? It's a tree painting. These are like a cast of characters, like the Golden Girls, 3 trees, even though they're cut off, right? But here, the trees are not the main subject, are they? I mean, for me, my goal was the mountain was the main subject, but I felt like these trees were important to give context. So they're not necessarily background. I would say they're more like supporting players. And you could see they're not as detailed, but because I didn't need them to be. But there's enough detail that informs that you, I think, get the idea of what kind of trees they are. They're evergreens. They're bowed by the weather. And then these ones in the distance, they're very abstracted, but still kind of pointy, and maybe they don't throw you off too much. But do you see what I mean? Knowing the overall shape and understanding it means you can interpret it however you like. Questions about evergreens, conifers? Have you guys drawn them a lot?
Not a lot.
I
Well,
got
Christmas
some that we
time.
did last year, and
Yeah.
they look pretty good. Get them out like a little.
Yeah, I think we'll do them again in December. So if you guys haven't joined, like I know most of you guys do, but surely you haven't joined my Friday watercolor happy hour. I do a free happy hour on Fridays from 4 to 5, and we draw a different subject every week. And you can drop in or drop out. It's free. It's only an hour, so it's super fun. And during we already did a cornucopia for Thanksgiving, and we'll do some wintry stuff in the winter. So yeah, so it's really fun. So I have your email now, so you'll get the email for this coming Friday. The emails go out on Thursday with the topic and the link for Friday, but it's the same link every week. So
Thanks.
yeah, if you guys have suggestions for what you want to do, we always crowdsource those too. They're really fun. I think I can, all you guys can, who've been there can say they're lots of fun. Good group of ladies.
They're
Mostly,
lots of fun.
sometimes we have guys. Okay. So let's talk about the third kind of tree. So you've got the palm tree or tropical trees. Very different looking than the other 2, right? So that's why I picked these 3 types. Plus we have a lot of them in Southern California. So palm trees can be really hard to draw, right? Anyone who's ever tried, it can be very deceiving. You think it's going to be easy and it's not. So they generally have a single trunk that tapers only slightly. So it doesn't even look like it can support these big tops a lot of the time. Check the scale. Make sure you understand how tall the tree trunk is compared to the top of the tree, the fronds. It is usually much taller than you draw it. If you don't check it, it's going to end up looking squatty. I literally just had that problem. Okay, so I'm going to share with you a mistake I made. Chris says, love this one. Is that the palm tree? I knew you would. Yeah. So where is that? It's in this little notebook of mine. So I wanted to do this palm tree. This is in Ojai during the pink moment. So you've got the mountains turning pink behind. This was where the tree was the star of my show. Then I wanted to show it in context, and I made it too small. I should have done the painting like this. So actually the tree was a lot thinner, and it was even taller than this. So even though there is a perspective, it does kind of show you how all the mid-century homes are, and it does give you that contrast. It actually was incorrect, was a lot taller. So yeah, if I'm out and I've got 10 minutes to capture the sunset, I didn't check the height and I don't have time to do it again like this. So it's kind of a bummer. So anyway, that's just my caveat. Try to measure. Just it's exciting to just get going, but sometimes it's better to just take a minute and measure things out. Okay, so the shape, the easiest way to think of the shape of the palm fronds is fireworks. Think of fireworks and it'll be so easy to draw. So the fronds go up, out and down, up, out and down like fireworks. And they come from a central point. So you've got a stalk. So draw the firework first. You've got the stalks, and then back here, that see that one's going down. It's going to the back because they don't all come forward. This one is here, and it's covered by the fronds. Okay, so these are your stalks. Once you've got that firework shape in there, then you can go in and you can draw the individual fronds in. Okay, and those have shapes too, and often those shapes are like diamonds or five-sided shapes. So, and they might have some curve to them. Then from the side, they're obviously not going to be the same shape. They'll be more triangular. Okay, but if you think about them as shapes, like this one, I just painted the shape of yellow. Then I added some texture scribbles. So yeah, and then some detail here where there's some palm berries hanging down. When they're there, they're always fun. Sometimes they're up in here. Sometimes you got little berries. I'll show you that. Okay. But if you think about that and you overlap them, you let them overlap each other, but you also let some sky hulls show through because almost always there's some light shining through. Then it'll look a lot more realistic. Okay. So we're going to draw one of these in just a second. Get rid of that. Okay. So here's that banana palm again. So there are obviously all different kinds of palm trees. This one I just did while I was on vacation, and I was in Spain and I had one brush. And so I kind of just tried to texturize, but it was a different kind of a palm tree than we have here. Here's a palm berries. This is an oil painting I did a while ago. And then this is a watercolor that I just did. So these palm trees are like the sunken squatty kind, like the elephant palms that you see in an oasis area. This is a Lost Palms Oasis at 29 Palms in Joshua Tree. So you don't even see the trunks really. They're so old and so squatty. You get all of the old fronds are down here at the bottom. And then even here. So of the like the live looking stuff, there wasn't even that much of it, you know, just bits of it. And then these different palm, what do you call these? Fan palms that were down here. Okay. So they can all look differently, just like with the other stuff. It's really helpful to study a little bit, get the general shape, and then sketch. Oh yeah, here's another one. Here, this one's pretty obvious. This was for me a lot about the value contrast, so the darks and the lights. Yeah, that was fun. This is at the Mola in Long Beach. They have a nice botanical garden in the back. Okay. Here you've got a couple palms. There's a royal. I'm not sure what this one is. And this was the star, but here this palm tree was just adding a bit of a frame is all it was. So sometimes you just want to tuck one in there to give you some foreground or something like that. Okay. So we are going to paint a palm tree in a little while since we've already done sort of our deciduous trees. But just an overview on these deciduous trees, they're basically just big shrubs, but they're taller. So think about that. Is this just a big ice cream shape with a trunk on it, right? Round canopy. Okay, and here you have an example where this is a magnolia. I forget what this is called, but where the leaves are pointing up. So again, just to recap, no matter what the tree is, you want to observe and create a shape in your brain, lightly sketch that, sketch the trunk to ground it, then sketch the canopy, then add your branches, then add your leaves and other details. That's how I do it. And I think about light and shadow. Where is the light coming from? Don't forget that cast shadow on the ground if there is one. When it comes to color and texture, whether it's marker or watercolor, I generally start with my light colors first and then add my darks, which also help me. That establishes my shadows. When I'm painting, I obviously use, different kind of brush techniques like scrubbing and things like that. But just as to how to approach it in layers, I generally don't start with the darks first. I start light, add dark, and I'm adding detail as I go, and then I add background. But you can use different techniques to get the same, effects in your watercolors. Use the side of your brush, for example, to scrub the paper and grab some of that texture. But I'm still thinking shape from large to small, and then where's my light coming from? Okay. So before we draw a palm tree, just to recap on telling a story. So when you're thinking about the story, what you want to think about is the tree going to be the main character or characters? Or is it just, is it a supporting character, or is it the background or the setting, or is it maybe a frame for your picture? So Ginny, I'm going to call on you. In this painting here, would you say the trees are the main characters, a cast of character, supporting players, background, or frame? What do you think?
Somewhat a frame.
Okay. And
And it is it is definitely cast of carriers because it's so dark.
yeah, it can be, I think, a few things in this picture. I think it could be the cast of characters, but I think also it can just be the setting. So when I look at this, I think Tuscany view, or, something like that. It could be Tuscan view with trees, maybe would even be what I would call it. So thinking of how I would title it helps me think, like, did I get my point across? So I wanted it to be lush. I definitely wanted the cypress to look like cypress, and I wanted an olive tree in there. So it was important to me to have like specific kinds of trees. But I also think in a way it forms the setting for these other things, the view, the buildings, and the wall, right? So it's not always so straightforward, but I think it's important to just give a little bit of thought to how you're using the trees. And if they're telling the story that you want to tell with them, like for here, for sure, no doubt, these trees are the main characters, right? Sometimes you have a cast of characters. It's not a tree painting, it's a trees painting.
Mhm.
And sometimes, oh, hey, Sarah, here's a picture of Lori. Sometimes the trees are supporting players. I think it's much more clear in the one on the left. Like this tree is a definite supporting player to Lori. So if you took Lori away, this would be the tree is the main subject, right? But because Lori is a human being, no matter what the scale of it, like this story is about how big the tree is compared to how small Lori is, right? How it dwarfs her. And then here in this picture, maybe not as clear, but you have several kinds of trees, but they're in the background. The middle and foreground are all these succulents. And then sometimes literally the trees are behind things and are the background. All right.
Mhm.
So for example, here in the setting of this road is literally set between the two trees. Same with the river, set between those trees. And here you've just got a couple of trees informing this landscape as a rural landscape. And again, the shape of the trees kind of gives you an idea of maybe what kind of trees they might be, but they're just like little brush marks. That's all they are. But because I know how to draw trees and I've looked at them, I know what shape to make those brush marks. So all these different uses. And then you've got the frames. So the one I showed you before, and then literally sometimes it's helpful to just have part of an object, part of a tree, create your foreground, especially when there is no foreground. So in this picture, if I had done like a straight on view of the house, it would have been all lawn, you know? And this is really about the house, but how do I frame this picture in a way that's interesting? And also, by the way, anyone who's gone to the rancho knows that these old banyan trees are a super important part of the house. Like they're really old and they're really beautiful. They were planted there to frame the house in real life. So I put them as a frame in the picture. So hopefully that helps you think about like your art versus just sketching trees, just a little bit. And then, you know, just practice a lot, like go out there and take your sketchbook and just draw from nature. This is at Camp Comfort, by the way. Or draw from pictures that you've taken. Just, you know, do a 10-minute sketch like we did already and we're going to do in a minute. And then here's some great references. I'll put these in the email. Really good references. The Laws Nature Guide goes into very specific how to draw the volumes of trees and branches and just so much stuff. And the Complete Watercolorist Essential Notebook is like, it is essential for anybody who's doing watercolor. And then there's a couple other ones in here. The New Urban Sketchers Handbook. There's a series. This one is Spotlight on Nature. It's all about trees and other things. It's great. It'll get you thinking. There's our big tree again. Okay. So let's see. Here's a nice palm tree. Should we draw this one? Should we do
Yes.
this one? Okay.
That's nice. And go back to the one just before it with all the trunk.
Yes, please.
Yeah, this one. Screen capture.
No, the one just before you, the last
The
picture.
banyan. Yeah, the banyan tree. This is
That
a
one.
rancho. Yeah, you guys.
That's not a tree.
This is actually their photo. You can see up here. It's not my photo, but good one, huh?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, this one will be a tough one because you've got the dappled light also, but I think it would be really a good challenge, a fun one. You're welcome. Okay, so how about we draw just this one here in front? Because we'll have about 10 minutes and then we'll wrap up with sharing and questions. And then if you feel like you want to do the other one behind it, I think this one is unnecessary on the right. But if you feel like you want to draw two, go ahead. But we'll go ahead and we'll take 10 minutes or so. So same process, shape and proportion. This one, if you want, you could extend the trunk, right? You could like make the whole trunk if you would like to. Again, that's the story you want to tell. It depends, right? Do you want the story to be about the whole tree? Excuse me. And it would have to be a very tall vertical composition to have all the details in there. So I don't
And are
know.
we painting this tree or drawing this tree?
You can draw it. If you have time to paint it, you're welcome to.
Okay, I see. All right, I'm just curious.
Yeah. I mean, I might have time because I draw a lot of palm trees. So I might splash some color on there.
I don't draw, so I have to color it.
So notice also, because I think it will help in the trunk, notice where the shadow side is. There's a very dark shadow on the right side of the trunk. And notice how it's bumpy. That's because this, from far away, the palm tree trunk might look like it is very smooth and straight up and down. And it's not. It's got little bumps to it, like an elephant's trunk kind of, right? It bulges in some places. And so you can really see that when you look at the dark side of it. Now, I know we're all watercolor painters in this group, but so feel free to add watercolor to this. But there's value to just sketching things, whether it's with ink or pencil. You can even sketch with watercolor, but when I say sketch, it's something different than painting, right? And I think there's value to doing that because we don't worry so much about the painting technique. We just think about the skill of drawing and capturing it accurately or somewhat accurately, as accurately as you want to. So remember the fireworks?
Mhm.
Okay. I'll stop talking now. It's a bit cut off at the top, so you might have to imagine the top. You know what? I don't have my feet with me. I'll be right back. It really helps if you want to add color to have it with you. So.
Did you get sufficient berries?
I did,
So these are.
yes.
So in painting in watercolor, you guys know that you could absolutely do an underpainting and get the blue sky in if you wanted to in your underpainting. With a lot of tree stuff, you have to mask out, like mask your lights if you do that. So I like to paint the backgrounds last, unless the colors that are going in front of it are very, very dark. Because this is so quick, what we're doing now, there's no time to mask. So when you don't have time to mask, painting the background in afterwards is the way to go. There's something else I wanted to mention too. Pick how many greens you're going to use when you're drawing trees. Don't use all the greens. Like, if you use too many greens, it can actually be kind of confusing. So what I'll do is I'll just pick like 3 greens, a light, a medium, and a dark. Or I'll mix 3 greens, a light, a medium, and a dark, and I'll try to stick with those, at least for the bulk of my painting. If I want to break those rules, I can break them afterwards, but it really does help. And then if I'm doing a landscape painting with a lot of trees in it, I do think to myself, should I change the colors on some of the trees to differentiate them, whether they are different species of trees or what? So I won't use all the colors that I've chosen on all of the trees. I'll use some colors on certain shaped trees and some colors on others. And so just be sort of discerning, I guess, when you're thinking about it. I think it will help because in the beginning, I used to get so excited about making greens and I would have, like, it would just be not cohesive as a picture. You guys struggling with this a little? I hear like sighing. So is anyone having a difficult time? Or are you're just working it out?
I just can't draw. I can paint it. It's funny. I can
Paint it.
slap that paint on.
Do it, Jerry, and do it. Yeah, you don't have to
Huh?
draw it.
No, I'm trying right now to do this tree. I've painted some palm trees with you in the past. I
Yeah.
should know how to do it.
Okay. But I mean, that's the thing is, you don't have to be able to paint to draw, to draw to paint. It's not required. So if you're more comfortable painting this, then just paint it and do it in whatever abstract way you want to.
I will later.
Because even when you, if you just go straight to paint and you're abstracting it, it's still going to be informed by all the things that we just talked about and that you just noticed, right? It's going to be,
Yeah.
you're going to have all of that in your brain. And when you go to paint it, that's when people go like, how did she do that? It's so abstracted, But it's still, that's the thing where you go, well, but I still knew exactly what it was. All right, 2 more minutes, everyone. I'm not finished. I don't know about you guys. I want to keep going. Like one whole branch I didn't even get to now that I'm looking at it. All right, going once, going twice. So here we are. Anyone get down anything good? Anyone want to share? I'm still putting color. Okay, I would love to see.
Whether it looks good or bad, I'm sharing,
Just and keep it held up. Oh, beautiful, Chris. Keep it held up. Bonnie, nice. You guys got a lot done. I think I was being too finicky. Surely, how many of you? I'll put everyone's spotlights up. So if you want to hold it up, keep it held up or, yeah. See, Jerry, that's great. Oh, very nice, Shirley. Beautiful. So you can always add color later if you want to, right? Yeah, I recommend you guys, if you like to fill in color, add, take a photo of it in just the pencil. It's kind of nice sometimes to have a picture of just the drawing that you did, even if you're going to go ahead and colorize it later. Oh, I love the berries you put in there, Bonnie. That's nice. And I'll show you guys mine. I forgot to show you mine. Sarah, I'll come to you too. Yeah. Oh, Sarah, you got 2 done. Look at you. Beautiful, Sarah. Yep, made a mess here. See, I didn't get very far. Oh, looking good, Sarah. Excellent, you guys. Yeah, I went a little finicky with my drawing, I think, but that's okay. I can finish it later. So that was really
Yeah.
fun, everybody. I really, really enjoyed it. I hope you guys did too. And
Yeah, I did very much.
Thanks, Ann.
oh, good. You're so welcome. I had so much fun today, and I really would love to hear from you guys what you want to do next.
Okay.
So we could do cacti, since that's the one we didn't get to, and for me, that's a whole other lesson, right? Or we could do something else in the landscape, rocks, whatever you guys want to learn and what you feel like you're struggling with learning. Just let me know, like shoot me an email or a text.
All right. Well, tell me how to do Venmo. I know how to do PayPal.
Oh, okay. I have a link if that's easier. That might be easier.
Okay, that's on the email that we got.
I don't, not yet, but I'll put it in the chat right now. Okay.
My iPad doesn't usually get the chat things. I don't see your,
Oh, okay.
I get the,
I'm Ann Cupie.
okay.
I don't know if that helps. So I'll put it in the email that I sent out tonight as a thank you. And I appreciate
Okay.
it. If you enjoyed
Okay.
it, then I'm so happy for the tip. It helps me pay for the Venmo.
Very much. And I didn't see you on PayPal when I looked, so I guess you're not doing that anymore.
I had to cancel
Okay.
my PayPal account because they were not, somebody kept hacking me and they wouldn't protect my accounts. They didn't even care.
Okay, well then,
So
that's
I got
bad.
rid of them. Yeah, it's really awkward. I'm sorry. I know I used to do all the tips on PayPal, and so yeah.
All right, we'll do
Anyways.
it the new way.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the class. I learned so much. I used to just copy. I just started watercolor. I sometimes paint in acrylic, but it really helped. It really helped to understand form and shape and branches, and it helps me perceive painting a different way. But also now when I go out into the world, I'm going to look at trees differently. So I appreciate that. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
you're welcome. Wait till we do the clouds lesson. You'll be walking into things all the time.
Do you have regular classes that people can sign up for?
I do. Yeah, I do all kinds of workshops. We do this, which is more of like with a thought towards plein air, you know, this one. I do this every month, but every Friday we have the happy hour, and then I do probably 3 or 4 workshops a month, and we go out into plein air. And so I do studio workshops, plein air workshops, Zoom workshops. I have a lot of things going on. Love to have
And
you.
that's on your webpage? Okay.
Yeah, except you're on my Instagram. It's actually going to be on my Instagram way more. I'm terrible at updating
Okay.
the website.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome, Shirley. I'm glad you had a good time. And you guys, I do owe you an email with all the new stuff. So I'm going to have an email out shortly that has all of my upcoming workshops and etc. Sorry.
Great, thanks, Dan.
Okay, you're welcome.
you,
Thanks for
Ann.
coming,
See you on
Sarah.
Tuesday.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Great class. Thank
Linda.
you.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.